if you're not part of that moment, you're sort of getting left behind. And then it's where do you find the right balance to what you're doing in branding and marketing, and how do you capitalize on this retail opportunity, but also stay really true to your brand ethos. Now you're able to understand what's happening on the digital shelf life across all these pure players. So if something's going on promotion, or let's think about it as your competitors on promotion and you're not being competitive enough, but you know they're going out of stock, you can immediately change your strategy then to capitalize on that moment. We talk a lot about partnering up with the right creators, and I think not enough time goes in investing in the data, because there's a lot of data about the creators and the type of audience that they have, and that's very important to brands. And you really do need to understand what are those interests, what's the affinities of the creators, is it the right brand match? For me, branding is more partnering with something that's really locally relevant, understanding the data behind that, building that credibility, or building a moment that you can own. That's creating a brand.
Hi, Alexis.
Hi.
How's it going?
Good, and you?
Good. Welcome to Below the Fold.
Thank you.
You're going to drink water? That's okay.
I know, I'll
go
drink
ahead.
water just now. I'm sure my mouth will get dry from talking too much.
For a good reason.
For good reason, hopefully.
Fantastic. What a lovely way to start the weekend.
I know.
Right? Have a conversation with someone as experienced as you. Tell us a little bit about your experience, or introduce yourself to the listeners and viewers of the show.
So I'm Alexis. I have been in marketing for longer than I would like to say for my sins. Sort of come full round through spectrum in my career. Most of it has been in advertising agencies, so media. I've worked with Omnicom and GroupM and come full spectrum.
Yeah.
I left, I worked in Africa, handling the whole of African markets, South Africa, as you can hear from the accent. And I then decided, as we do in marketing, I need a sabbatical after, let's just say, over a decade. And I went and did some consulting, because I also like to do the consulting side, which is more full spectrum. And that's also where the agencies were moving towards. So I did some consulting for groups like Estee Lauder companies, and playing very much in retail space. And then moved client side. Yeah, I've come to the Middle East now for 4 years. Also joined here in an agency, but then left and went to work at Elshire as a consultant for them, leading their digital transformation project, which was really exciting. Amazing. You're working with 72 brands. I mean, what
impressive. Yeah, no pressure.
No pressure.
Yeah.
But it was really good to have that sort of blended background. And then I've come back and now joined Publicis, where I'm working on Samsung, also as part of the Power of One, and leading a lot of different verticals and trying to extend that into things beyond just media, but also looking at what we do, marketing in general.
Yeah. I mean, with this entire transformation, agencies are having, right? It's always beyond media.
Yeah, it's always beyond media. And I think it needs to be beyond media, right? We can't pigeonhole ourselves. And also, as businesses' needs evolve, especially if you think of it from like what our audience has evolved, the way media is consumed,
the way they're consuming
media is evolved.
Media.
Exactly. And we need to keep up with that. And how do you be relevant? But also then you have this business side. So you need to think of how the two are blended together and how we merge the two things.
Right. And from what you've said, you've had an incredible experience with retail.
Yes.
So you must have witnessed the evolution of retail in this digital age.
Yeah.
What would you say were like key milestones in this evolution?
In this evolution?
Yeah.
I can even go back to when we used to have to motivate to get budgets.
Yeah.
Where everything was put on traditional.
Right.
But in terms of retail space, I think where it's definitely evolved is a lot of people, commerce came into play and people didn't really understand it or see the value of it. And I mean, even if I think of the clients that I worked with, a lot of the time when we were doing these retail war rooms for Black Fridays or things, it took a while to bring brands on boards and marketers on boards to understand, okay, I've been so focused on my store and my footprint. And I remember the one thing that we used to do is we really took, so that milestone came in before, where you were sort of teaching them about, okay, if you look at what you're doing in terms of your site traffic, that's actually the amount of people, think of it as your footfall. And we sort of used to explain it to them that like in these commerce and retail moments. And I think what happened with brands is they saw the opportunity, and a big explosion of that was these moments that were created in terms of retail shopping moments. In the Middle East particularly, we have many shopping moments through the years, and that's really exploded.
Right. To name a few, I suppose, Eid, right.
Black Friday,
yeah,
Red Friday, Yellow Friday,
White Friday. Yeah.
There's so many names in the region. And I think that explosion largely happened due to COVID, because during COVID, the only way we could really shop was through commerce. And you saw all those predictions before where it was growing at this relatively normal pace, but post-COVID, it really accelerated and people became smart. The audience is smart to these retail moments. The other thing I suppose that's really interesting about that is you create this conundrum where brands now that, let's say for brands in luxury spaces that don't want to be part of a retail shopping promotional moment, but if you're not part of that moment, you're sort of getting left behind. And then it's like, where do you find the right balance to what you're doing in branding and marketing, and how do you capitalize on this retail opportunity, but also stay really true to your brand ethos, I suppose.
Right. And it's not just about online commerce, right?
No, not at all.
It's the entire...
I suppose that was the next explosion, right? Is that brands started with their D2C, and this was something that was explored, and then it really picked up over COVID. But then you have these pure players, your Amazons, your Noon, your Namshi. In South Africa, the big player, we didn't have Amazon. We had a Take-A-Lot, which was massive. And Take-A-Lot was the monopoly in the region. And then slowly all these other brands started to pick up. And it's the same thing here. There's all these local, relevant, pure players in the region that sometimes brands that are more international, like an Amazon, struggle with, right? Because it's hard to compete with these local pure players as well.
Yeah,
and I think
because they have this local insight, right?
Exactly, and they're really geared for it. They have this local insight, and I think a lot of the time, the competitiveness of them is a little bit more edgy than the likes of the global brands, and that makes it really interesting. And like you say, the local insight and being able to be really relevant, understanding how to speak to that customer is really key. It's, speaking to them in a very human way, understanding the promotion that you're driving. And sometimes there's a lot of tech and tools that they're using to understand and capitalize on what are those moments and how competitive are they in terms of what all the pure players are doing. And that's really an interesting space, because I feel like the guys like the Noons and the Namshis are really capitalizing on that in quite an agile way that sometimes the global brands take a little bit longer to pick up on.
Any tools you can name, like that they're using?
Well, we have a tool at the moment called Profiteo, which is a proprietary tool.
Yeah.
And it basically lets you understand digital shelf life, which is really interesting, right? Because if you think about it in store, now you're able to understand what's happening on the digital shelf life across all these pure players. So if something's going on promotion, or let's think about it as your competitor's on promotion and you're not being competitive enough, but they're going out of stock, you can immediately change your strategy then to capitalize on that moment.
Okay.
Or if you see there's certain keywords that are being bid on more aggressively, or keywords that you're bidding on that are not performing, you're able to then look at that data, take that, and then reutilize that in some other form. So reinvest that where it's actually working for you, so you can capitalize on the opportunity within the pure player space.
Okay, understood. And if we talk about brands, right? Brands that want to embrace this space, right? Commerce.
Yeah.
I was discussing some numbers with a friend that works in the space, that has been working in the space for quite a long time. And we've landed on numbers that are quite low for brands when it comes to online commerce. So today, for brands, online retail, online commerce is 10%, 15%. It's still very low.
Yeah.
Brands are still looking or are still prioritizing offline retail, right?
Yeah.
Opening shops in certain malls, in certain areas, key prime locations, etc. And one of the things that we spoke about that is influencing this expansion in online commerce, and this is where I would need your input, is investment. So it's investment in bringing traffic, in growing that online commerce behavior.
Yeah.
What do you think? Like, what is it that brands can do in order to grow their online share, I guess, of retail?
I know it's going to sound cliche, but it's very much, and I'll take it back, it goes back to the experience you're providing. So to your point, the numbers in the region are still very low, right, in terms of D2C, so those commerce sites. And I think a large part of that is because the digital experience or the experience you providing, and if you take away digital, it's a shopping experience. And one thing that I find in the region that's potentially been slow uptake is a lot of it is still very desktop driven. And a lot of our audience and our key audience is shopping on their device. And if you look at the shopping experience in terms of doing that on your mobile device, it's not really good. There's a lot of hiccups in terms of when you scroll, it doesn't, if you click through to the ad, it doesn't take you directly to the product you clicked on. You're back at the page. It can be sticky in terms of how you navigate through that. So that experience, I think, is really key that you provide when you're doing this shopping experience. The other thing that's really interesting in the region is I don't think I've worked in any market in the world where there are so many malls.
There's a culture aspect, right?
There's a culture aspect, and it's a very much, it is a more cultural aspect, and people want to feel and touch, which makes it more interesting, because that means then what you're doing in terms of that online shopping experience needs to be more. It can't just be something that's run-of-the-mill that everyone's doing. And that's why I think things like SEO and AI are going to play a really big role in customizing that experience, because that's the differentiation that you can play in that space. And there's something really cool at the moment that Adobe is coming out with, which is all through, and Google as well with Gemini AI, where what it's doing from an SEO perspective, if I take a step back, is you're able through Adobe is to automate the site experience based on your personal preference. So you're not just landing on the page and where it would traditionally be whatever was on promotion and then it might take you through to what I clicked on. It'll actually build a profile based on what you've been searching for, which, we'll talk about the evasiveness of all of it in a moment. But think it knows me as Alexis, and I'm interested in purses, and I like a lot of black, and I want to look for clothes that are more comfortable, and so it's going to build that whole thing around what I've purchased before and show me like for like products through AI. There's no back-end tech, there's no customization that needs to be done. It's automated through what you're doing, through how your habits are online, which is really interesting. And I know, so it's personalization, and we've talked a lot about personalization in terms of what we've done in marketing and digital marketing before everyone's. But this is really a game changer, because now it's automating that experience. So that means then your retail experience, think about the opportunity for brands being able to, once you walk into that store and I can sign in through, you train your point of sale and assistants to sign in, I'm already building a profile in store. And a lot of luxury brands have done this really well, such as Dior. They make you sign in, they know your profile, they know what you bought before. And they link that then to what they do online and through their apps. So they know when and they're very good at seeding you things. We have a private collection, come watch.
I have a hard time thinking that this is just Dior, Alexis, because every shop I enter in any mall, whenever I purchase anything, they ask me for my details. Right?
Exactly. Zara, H&M's, I think all brands understand the value of it. It took the luxury brands were maybe a little bit of a step ahead. Now brands realize that's what you want, right? So if you're able to then link what you're doing in store to what you do when you're online, it really allows you to scale that personalization. And that's a different experience. And that's something quite unique.
Right.
And I think marketing is even beyond that, right? It's like, so if you take that then and it's about how the products are delivered to you, so you can go into that, because yes, it's a cultural thing. It's still very much touch and sense. If you're ordering from the likes of Amazon, it's very different to the likes of a brand like Sephora. And Sephora still have managed to maintain like very good packaging, but they still create those little quirks that, you know, it's the way they wrap the tissue paper in. And that stuff really is important. And through researching that, you understand that. And that's why I think the digital space is really able to elevate what we can do with technology, because you're able to understand that preference and sort of build from it.
Right. Can you develop a little bit more on that? So how would Sephora pick up then the information about the user in order to customize, right?
Sephora knows
delivery.
everything.
Sorry?
Sephora knows everything
Sephora knows everything.
I think Sephora knows. So if you think about it from the type of products you're using, they know how frequently you're purchasing the products. So if you go beyond like what you can do in paid, but you think about what they do in CRM, they're really good at understanding it's time that Alexis is going to now replenish her face products. We're going to send her this, as well as, oh, look at this new product. And the other thing that they do is through their partnerships with all the brands, they're so good at this. They've caught me many times, more than I would like to admit, but you get free samples. So you we get these free samples, and then you think, oh, but they land up, you're like, oh, I actually like this one. Now I'm going to add it. And that's really good. And it's those little things like the way it's packaged, the way it's personalized to me. They sort of give you these samples, so you're allowed to like upsell, but it locks you into the brand. I don't want to be going anywhere else, because I know I can get all my products there. They're going to give me this, and I'm going to get this added value in terms of how they speaking to me in a CRM perspective. The emails I'm getting are very much focused on what I purchase. And that's something that they do really well. I think their segmentation and profiling is really good of their audiences. They also do a lot with partnerships in terms of how they're leveraging influencers and creators, which is something quite good. It's a different game, though, in the beauty space.
How so?
I think in beauty and cosmetics, that is completely fast-moving. And if you look culturally in this region, it is very much appearance.
Yeah.
Makeup is massive. If you look what's happened anywhere, even around the globe, makeup tutorials, it's exploded, right? There's a massive culture for it. And I think that's the brand has really leveraged that and partnered with some very up-and-coming new cosmetic brands that's allowed them to stay at the edge of that and really take advantage of what they're doing in terms of the brands they partner with, the influencers they're looking at with, and then how they can get that to the customer.
Huda Beauty.
Huda Beauty is an example.
Yeah.
Perfect example, right?
Yeah.
Also started in a garage.
Started in a garage. Yeah. It's an inspirational story, actually.
It is really inspirational story.
Yeah. And I do want to touch on the role of social commerce. Right, how that's been moving in the region here, because I was also having a discussion with people that work in the dropshipping space.
Yeah.
And for those that are not familiar with dropshipping is basically you take an existing product and you build for it a landing page, right? And then you create ads.
Yeah.
And you run these ads on social media. And you get you optimize for people to go to your landing page, order the product. The order goes directly to the manufacturer. The manufacturer delivers to the end user, and you just take like a commission, right? And these people that work in the space, right? These dropshippers have mentioned that the region is still not mature enough for people to buy off social media right off the bat, like they do in the more developed e-commerce markets like the United States.
Yeah. I think the United States is one thing, right? I think because of the volume they have there and the e-commerce maturity is a lot mature. I do see there is a trend line where it's picking up. Younger generations are quite used to the dropshipping model, especially in social commerce. Social commerce, I think, is more, there's more room for that, and I potentially see that picking up a lot soon, just purely because it's partnering with a collab. There's live commerce, and the reason there's a lot of appetite for that in the region is because there's a big gaming culture in the region, and a lot of people are already used to that live gaming, buying in games. So if you're partnering with a great creator and it's a live commerce experience, it really does drive volume. It also creates a lot of relevancy in terms of the content and the live engagement and sort of feedback that you're getting with the products that you're selling. With dropshipping, what's interesting is, to your point, I think people, because there's so many that's popped up, there's also a level of trust. So sometimes the audience can feel like, is this really legit? And how relevant is it? The other thing that I'm finding with the dropshipping model is the prices. What's tending to happen is because they're selling through, they've created this, they're selling through a reseller, they're taking a percentage, they've got a margin markup. But in the region, the audience, because of this whole culture that we've bred now of these shopping moments and promotion and things, they're a lot smarter. So it's, you're not going to just buy that. I'm going to go to Amazon and check the price and Noon and Namshi and do a Google search, and you're probably going to find it for half the price. I have a friend who's doing something similar, and like one of the challenges is, it's great and the site is amazing, but if you look at the competition, I'm like, it's 50% less if I'm getting it from Tima, and it's the same product. So that, I think, is a challenge more so for the dropshipping model. Social commerce, I think if it's done right and you're partnering with a creator, it can completely elevate. And I think that we're going to see a lot more brands jumping on.
So for brands that want to utilize social commerce, it needs to be, partnering up with the right social creator. They need to tap into the creator's economy. They need to be using the right data as well, right?
Exactly.
Fueling the campaigns with the right data.
That's a big part of it, right? Is we talk a lot about partnering up with the right creators, and I think not enough time goes in investing in the data, because there's a lot of data about the creators and the type of audience that they have, and that's very important to brands. And you really do need to understand what are those interests, what's the affinities of the creators, is it the right brand match? I find sometimes what tends to happen is, this creator has the highest following, and okay, cool, this is going to fit in, and it feels sometimes forced instead of more natural, organic growth, and this is a partnership with the creators. And that's something that you can really leverage with data, and there's a lot of data around creators and linking that to the brand. And I think brands are starting to see the value in investing behind that and really tracking. And as we move into this commerce and very much pure player and space, it is more, you need to proof point. It's not just the old days, I say, of spray and pray. As you know,
I love that expression. I wonder, where did you learn it? When you were working client side or agency side?
I used to, it was a bit of a mix, right? Because I come from a performance background, and I'm not a fan of reach and frequency campaigns.
Of spray and pray, you mean?
Spray and pray.
Okay.
And I think so that it doesn't work, right? And I'm part of, I really do believe in analyzing the numbers and understanding. And I think nowadays you have to, and I see that, and working on the client side, I saw that a lot. You need to prove that dollar and where you're spending it. And that was something that's definitely shifted in the last couple of years, and it's become more pressured to just understand what is my ROI, what am I getting back, where am I spending these dollars. And it's an interesting space because it also plays the what's the balance, right? And sometimes without the likes of statistical modeling, things like MMMs, how do you prove the value of what you're doing in your bigger, like what we would call branding activations? And do we call those branding activations? I don't know if that's branding. For me, branding is more partnering with something that's really locally relevant, understanding the data behind that, building that credibility or building a moment that you can own. That's creating a brand. Or creating something that people want to talk about, right? That's branding.
Yeah.
I don't think media can solve branding. That's where true marketing needs to come into play. And I think creative has a massive role to play in that space.
Yeah.
It always has. I feel like sometimes media agents have been pushed. What's the big idea? Don't you get that? And this is an innovation.
Yeah.
Okay, if you want to, what's your brief? We want some branding and we really want to grow the brand. Okay, if we want to grow the brand, then we need to have a brand strategy, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of importance in finding the balance between brand and performance. And I think what has happened is we've become very focused on performance, which has a role to play. But what we see in the long run is you do tend to then lose the brand ethos. And that's still important.
Yeah.
And I suppose it brings to another point of like the culture we have changed. And as a society, we have changed. And I think people expect brands to have points of views.
Right.
And it's not just about selling. It's that where's your stand? What does this brand stand for?
Right. I think the media still needs to be accountable in delivering the right avenues for brands to express themselves.
Exactly.
Right. The right avenues that are measurable, that provide this space. Right. Whether it's a large video format, or like a homepage takeover. I'm just saying anything very, very basic, or a bridge.
Yeah,
right.
A bridge.
Not a bridge, maybe specifically for branding, but you get what I mean.
I think that's the thing, right? Media has a very important role to play in that. You need to provide that space for the brand to be able to grow, but it needs to be sort of fully integrated into this bigger ecosystem with what is your content doing in that space? How does media then allow you to really get that message out there in very relevant, appropriate spaces that is where your audience is going to be?
Right.
And from a technology perspective, how are we then using tech to enhance that experience? Okay, so
how do we make it work?
How do we make it work?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think so many times you get this question, right? I've been on the client, how do you make this work?
Right.
And that is, how do we make it work? It's what is the technology that's going to accelerate this? And there's so much at the moment within that space.
Yeah.
Even from how we measure.
Right. And speaking of that, I wanted to talk with you about retail success metrics, especially that you mentioned that you have some brands that demand what is the return for this investment, brands that are still selling 80% offline. And I suppose one of the metrics that they look to achieve is footfall.
Yeah.
And we had a conversation about footfall, if you remember, when we first met, which I found very insightful.
Yeah.
And I'd like you to elaborate a little bit more about your experience when it comes to measuring footfall for brands, in more particularly in the region. Is it accurate? Does it work? Do, for example, beacons work? Is there a different way to link advertising spend to footfall?
So how we've done it is, how I've done it in my experience with, is there's a couple of ways to measure footfall. And the reason it has become so important is because you are motivating. As a client, they would be motivating for that marketing budget, right? And if that marketing budget is tied to that 10% of your e-com store, it's very hard to justify why you need that spend. If you do models, you actually find out this budget is attributing 40% of the overall revenue, for example. I'm just throwing a number. How we've tested it with what we've done in marketing, for one, is we integrated offline sales data into the platform, and then you were able to attribute what was out of the people who saw the ads through that in-store data. We can do an attribution model where you can understand then how much did that campaign actually attribute. So instead of showing a 5% attribution when you're just looking at D2C or 10%, then you can see all of a sudden we're attributing 40. There's a caveat there. You have to do this with partners, right? And the thing that I always recommend is that you run incrementality on top of that, because incrementality will show you what is the true impact of that campaign. Because there's the amount of people who've seen your ad basically in incrementality is 30% of them, regardless, we're going to shop for that product. But that incremental uplift of that 20%, that's your incremental uplift, so to prove the value. And that's how you can really do proper attribution to what is O2O, well, online to offline. And so one way is by integrating your offline data with partners. The other thing is through beacon technology in that. And I know there's been quite a bit of inaccuracy in that footfall traffic. But again, then through modeling, and this is why data modeling is so critical, and working with the data science team to really understand what's the attribution of that footfall. You can also then understand who's driving. But the only way you link that back is by getting that ID or email login. You hash that and we put it into platforms to understand in that ecosystem, did they see the ad? And then what was the attribution of that to the ad? Another thing that's interesting now, since we spoke, that's new, that's come out, is because we have all these Google Pay or Apple Pay, one of the tests that we've done for Samsung is that we're attributing through Google Play technology to understand of that ad who went in store and actually purchased it. So you can do O2O in that based on transactional data. Obviously, the data shared, it's completely privacy and GDPR compliant. But what it did do is you were allowed to see, okay, of those people who saw my ads, who went in store and actually purchased it, and then link it back. And
but use Google Pay to purchase, right?
It, yes.
Yeah.
The other thing that really works well is the loyalty programs. And having strong loyalty programs is a way to really elevate brands' data. And that allows us then to use that in campaigns to understand how are we attributing. We can use that in measurement and modeling to really see what's that O2O attribution. Geo-targeting in the region is something that I think is still on the uplift. In South Africa, for example, they have quite a big geo-targeting ecosystem, and they did it through device IDs, and there's multiple partnerships. And you're able to track exactly the propensity and the volumes around, for example, one of your billboards. You can also see in a location if there was event, what was the sentiment, the heat mapping around that, which was really clever when you're doing things like specific campaigns that you're able to do through digital and activate them. So I think geo is something that has massive opportunity, especially now with out of home becoming more measurable and also programmatic out of home starting to pick up in the UAE and Saudi. Then it's going to be more interesting, because then we can be quite tactical and again more targeted in terms of contextually where we're placing the ads. It allows you to do those sort of hackings where you can hijack competitive brands. There's this heat mapping, for example. KFC has a lot of volume happening. There's a lot of, because of the heat mapping, there's a lot of things going around in a certain location. Okay, how does my brand then come in, because I have a store right there, and sort of hijack that? And you could come in, and brands could be really clever in terms of looking at things like promotion codes and 100% discount now, jump the queue and come to, so you can own moments and spaces like that, which is really interesting.
So location data partners could step in to give you the audience insights.
Exactly.
Right, but also
then linking
these audiences with your online audiences.
With your online
to be
audience.
able to measure.
Exactly, to be able to measure. And then also what you're doing around how you plan your out of home, and in those locations you plan it around where do we have volumes, where's the stores. It's not just, it's about how you can own moments, but we know there's a lot of activity around a certain location. How do we own that space?
Right.
And I think the more reactive you can be, the more creative brands will end up becoming in terms of the content that they're pushing out there. It's not just get your burger.
So you have
it can be you know, you can take and own the moment. You can understand what people are doing and talking about, which is really interesting.
As opposed to spray and pray, right?
Spray and pray, no more spray and pray.
But you have these you have providers like these in the region, which perhaps are underutilized, or perhaps maybe aren't doing enough to educate clients or brands, such as LifeSite or MeMob or Madict.
It's true, and I think that's a very good point, and something that I've noticed, and I suppose it's because I have this hybrid of experience coming from agency, consulted, and being clients. It's very interesting because sometimes how these partners and the technology is so amazing, and it's the way it's packaged sometimes. I don't think brands are really understanding how to utilize the tech. And sometimes I really feel like we have the opportunity to package things a certain way. We do it as agencies from working on client side. I'm like, it's too much jargon. Talk it to me simply. Keep it simple and tie it back to a business impact. And I find that we struggle to do that. I see myself slipping back into agency lingo now, and I'm like, oh, I remember clients used to hate this. I need to stop myself from doing it. And it's just because you're around it and you're wired to think like that. So it's very much about how you package it. And I think we have so much opportunity with the partners, but it is about understanding what that tech can enable us to do. And then how do we support in packaging that so it links very much to what the business needs for the client. And then I think we have room to really grow the space.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I felt we needed to talk about this, about Footfall, because of the culture here, right? The retail culture, you know, going to, visiting the mall. Which I question for maybe younger generations. Perhaps a subject for a different time. I do want us to talk a little bit more about AI, because you've told me that you've been playing with AI, right? To help you with your daily tasks. Where do we start?
Well, as you know, you've seen. I read a lot about AI. I find AI fascinating. Anything that I think is going to help us be more efficient and create time saving, I'm up for. I encourage my team to use AI. Currently, I suppose if I wanted to talk about some of my favorite AI tools, there's a few. The one at the moment that really we're using a lot and we're training through is ChatGPT, which at Publicis we use in our walled garden ecosystem. But what's really amazing about what you can do now with that version is it allows you to take an idea and quickly be able to articulate that. We're using it a lot for image building. So working with partners and things, exactly like we were saying, sometimes they're not understanding the business impact. We are the bridge between that. We understand the tech. The client doesn't understand the tech. How do we bridge that together? So we've used AI to sort of build those mock-ups and say, create this image for us with this massive display in the middle of Mall of the Emirates, and it's all about hijacking moments and And we were able to create that through AI. Before we would have briefed the media partner, they would have gone back into design studio, created it, come back. We were also able then to articulate what we wanted to do, and it was able to package it for us in a really concise way.
Amazing.
I suppose the part that I love AI for is more the analysis of data and numbers. Like I've told you, you know, I love incrementality testing. I love analyzing data. I love modeling, but sometimes I don't have the time to do that. And even basic media reporting, how much time do we spend, one, collecting the data, and then you're often spent with 20% of your time to actually analyze it. And that's where you need more of the time. And one thing that you can really do with AI is analysis of data. I've recently started playing in with Microsoft's AI widget for Excel, which I'm loving. It's really allowed me to automate a lot of the formulas and clean up data paths, sets a lot quicker than if I was doing that manually. And I encourage my team to do the same thing. The other thing is what you can do with sometimes when we package things for clients, it really is good to have that visualization or that slight animation. And another tool that I really enjoy working with is Runway AI. It allows you to take static images and create very slight movements, which are amazing for presentations and things. And it also works amazing in what you're doing in media.
Right.
Sometimes it doesn't need to be this massive video content. It can be these slight animations that are really quick to build through Runway.
And they help with storytelling, right?
That's the whole point. What do? We are storytellers. It's how do you package the tech, package what we're doing in marketing, package what the business and client needs. It's storytelling.
Right. And yeah, I mean, this is, I guess you also touched on it a little bit earlier. It's on us to be able to simplify these technologies and how they work, right, for the client.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's the key. You said it there. It's simplification. It's how can we do things, streamline things that were mandatory tasks, so we have more time to spend on thinking and simplify what we say. We really do. I challenge my team all the time. I'm like, what are you trying to say in this slide? Keep it simple. Lose the jargon. Speak to me like a human. I'm like, explain it. Think of it as you're explaining it to your gran. How would you get her to understand?
Right.
And that's something that's really key. And I've seen my team is amazing. I love them. They're brilliant. And they really are fully taking on board AI, and the way they package their presentations is just a true attribute to, one, being curious and wanting to learn, and two, also creating those, like that culture of just support and how we can work together. And then really what we do in marketing is just make what we do fun, right?
Right, yeah.
We spend more time with each other than we do our families, so we might as well enjoy it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think we've covered a lot.
I think we might need another session to deep dive into another point or pillar.
I definitely think there's a lot more that you can share.
There was a lot of information to try get in, and I suppose we can spend some more time on each of them, but it's a pleasure.
Sounds great. Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thank you for coming to the show, Alexis.
Thank you for
Appreciate
having
your time.
me. Thank you for having me.